It's a ghost in the machine, sir. A multi-million-dollar phantom. Staff Sergeant Caden Rourke's voice was tight with a frustration that bordered on insubordination. He gestured at the sleek, carbon fiber weapon system resting on the padded table. The XM-2100 is supposed to be the future of long-range engagement. Right now, it's the most expensive paperweight in the entire Marine Corps. We've run every diagnostic. The factory techs are stumped. It's DOA. General Marcus Vance stared at the rifle, his jaw a granite slab of disapproval. For 3 weeks, his elite force recon sniper team, the best of the best, had been utterly defeated by a piece of equipment designed to make them invincible. Every shot was a flyer, every calculation a lie. A weapon that couldn't miss had failed completely, and with it, the confidence of his men. An entire strategic program was on the verge of collapse because of a stubborn ghost no one could find. Type legend if you believe some heroes never retire. Miles away, in a quiet workshop filled with the scent of cedar shavings and old oil, Elias Thorne ran a calloused thumb over the stock of a half-finished rocking chair. The world of harmonic dampeners and integrated ballistics computers was a universe away from the simple, honest grain of the wood beneath his fingers. Elias was a man carved from the same timber as the mountains he lived in, weathered, quiet, and solid. His hands, though knotted with age, moved with a practiced economy that spoke of a lifetime of precision. He didn't own a smartphone. His television had tubes. His life was a quiet protest against the frantic noise of the modern world. When the old landline on the wall jangled, its shrill ring cutting through the peaceful rasp of his hand playing, he already knew who it was. Only one person still used that number. Elias, the voice on the other end said, skipping the pleasantries. It was Marcus Vance. They hadn't worn the same uniform in 30 years, but the bond forged in the crucible of service was absolute. I've got a problem only a ghost can solve. An hour later, a dusty, 20-year-old Ford pickup truck, its paint faded by decades of sun, rumbled up to the main gate of the heavily fortified Marine Corps base Quantico. The young lance corporal at the gate eyed the vehicle and its driver with undisguised skepticism. The old man behind the wheel wore a flannel shirt, faded jeans, and work boots caked in sawdust. He looked more like he was headed to a hardware store than to a consultation on a top-secret weapons platform. Name? The guard asked, his tone flat. Elias Thorne. General Vance is expecting me. The guard tapped the name into his console, his eyebrows shooting up as an immediate, high-priority clearance flashed on his screen. His posture instantly straightened. My apologies, sir. Proceed through lane 1. The general is waiting for you at hangar 7-inch. Elias navigated the pristine base, a stark contrast to his own world of organized chaos. He pulled up next to a gleaming black sedan with a general's star on the bumper. Marcus Vance emerged, his uniform immaculate, but his smile was the same one Elias remembered from their youth. He enveloped the old man in a hug that ignored rank and time. Elias. You look, exactly the same, Marcus lied warmly. You look tired, Marcus, Elias replied, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He followed the general into the sterile, climate-controlled hangar where the XM-2100 team was assembled. The air was thick with tension and the low hum of diagnostic equipment. Staff Sergeant Rourke and his 4-man team snapped to attention. They were young, fit, and radiated the quiet arrogance of men at the absolute peak of their profession. When General Vance introduced the civilian consultant, their eyes flickered over Elias's worn clothes and placid expression. Disappointment and disbelief clouded their faces. This was the expert. This old woodworker was going to solve a problem that had baffled military engineers and corporate technicians. Rourke, ever the professional, stepped forward. Sir, Staff Sergeant Rourke. It's an honor, the words were correct, but the tone was laced with condescension. The general said you have some experience with older systems. Something like that, Elias said, his eyes not on Rourke, but on the rifle. He walked toward it, his gait slow and deliberate, ignoring the holographic schematics and data streams projected on the wall behind it. Rourke launched into a technical briefing, a torrent of jargon meant to impress and inform. As you can see, the issue is an intermittent velocity deviation, inconsistent with the barrel's cold-bore characteristics. We've recalibrated the integrated optics suite, triple-checked the software for firmware conflicts, and even laser-mapped the barrel for microscopic fissures. The propellant metrics are stable, but the harmonic dampener seems to be creating a counter-frequency that throws the projectile off by as much as 3 MOA at 1,500 meters. It's a software problem, but we can't isolate the corrupted code. The other Marines nodded, their expressions serious. They had lived and breathed this data for weeks. Elias didn't even glance at the screens. He simply stood before the rifle, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. He ran a single, gnarled finger along the barrel shroud, his touch so light it barely seemed to make contact. The team exchanged impatient glances. General Vance remained silent, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. He had seen this before. He was watching a master artist sizing up a flawed canvas. After a long, uncomfortable silence, Elias spoke, his voice quiet but cutting through the hangar's sterile hum. "Did you check the seating of the tensioning screw in the forward chassis mount?" Rourke blinked, caught off guard by the simple, mechanical question. Sir, that's factory torque to a specific nanometer setting. The onboard sensors would flag any deviation. It's not a mechanical issue, the computer told you that. Elias asked, a hint of something, not sarcasm, but genuine curiosity, in his voice. Yes, sir. The diagnostics are clear, Rourke affirmed, his confidence returning. This old man was out of his depth. May I? Elias asked, gesturing to the rifle. Rourke hesitated, glancing at the general, who gave a subtle nod. With a sigh of strained tolerance, Rourke stepped aside. The moment Elias's hands touched the XM-2100, the atmosphere in the hangar shifted. The slow, slightly stooped old man seemed to vanish. In his place stood someone else entirely. His posture straightened. His movements became fluid and precise, imbued with a certainty that was almost unnerving. He didn't treat the rifle as a machine, he handled it like a living thing, an extension of his own senses. He worked the bolt, not to check its function, but to feel its rhythm, to listen to the whisper of metal on metal. He closed his eyes, his thumb resting on the trigger guard. From a worn leather pouch on his belt, the kind a carpenter might use for drill bits, he produced a single, simple tool, a custom-made torque wrench, no larger than a pen, with a handle made of polished deer antler. He ignored the rifle's complex electronics. He fit the tool onto the tiny, seemingly insignificant screw he'd asked about. He gave it a turn. There was no audible click, no dramatic movement. It was a turn so minuscule, so infinitesimal, it was barely perceptible. Then he did the same to an identical screw on the opposite side. He then pulled out a small vial of synthetic oil and applied a single drop to the bolt carrier group, wiping the excess with a practiced motion. The entire process took less than 90 seconds. He stepped back. "There," he said. Rourke stared, flabbergasted. "There? Sir, with all due respect, you barely did anything. You tightened a screw the sensors say was already perfect, the sensors are listening for what the engineers told them to listen for," Elias said calmly, his eyes meeting Rourke's. "They're programmed for perfection. But nothing made of steel and powder is ever perfect. It breathes. It settles. This rifle has a resonance, a tiny vibration from the barrel harmonics. The screw on the left was torqued a fraction tighter than the one on the right. The computer couldn't detect it because it was within tolerance, but it was enough to throw the balance off. You were trying to fix a software ghost, but the problem was in its bones. You forgot to listen to the rifle." An incredulous silence filled the hangar. Rourke looked at his team, then back at the old man. It was insane. It was impossible. General Vance finally spoke, his voice booming with authority. "Staff Sergeant, take your team and the weapon to the long range. I want a 5-round group. Now, on the 2,000-meter range, the wind was a fickle, gusting enemy. Rourke settled behind the XM-2100, his confidence shaken but his training taking over. He dialed in the windage and elevation, the rifle's advanced computer projecting a perfect firing solution onto his optical display. He took a breath, squeezed the trigger, and sent the first round downrange. He fired 4 more in quick succession. The voice of the spotter crackled over the radio, strained with disbelief. "Sir. I have visual. All 5 rounds are inside a single 4-inch circle. Sir, that's a sub-quarter MOA group." It's a perfect group." Rourke slowly lifted his head from the scope, his face pale. He looked at the rifle, then back at the observation tower where Elias stood with the general. He had just witnessed a miracle. The ghost was gone. Back in the hangar, the team stood before Elias, their arrogance completely stripped away, replaced by a profound and humbling awe. Rourke cleared his throat, his voice thick with emotion. "Sir. Mr. Thorne. I was dismissive. I was arrogant. And I was wrong. I apologize. What you did, how did you know?" Elias looked at the young Marine, his gaze softening. "You boys are the best shots in the world. You know the science. But shooting isn't just science. It's an art. You have to feel the weapon, understand it. That rifle is a part of you. Its heartbeat has to match yours. I didn't know. I just listened." General Vance stepped forward and placed a heavy hand on Elias's shoulder. He looked at the young, humbled faces of his elite team. "Marines," he began, his voice dropping to a tone of reverence. "You study doctrine. You read about the legends of the Corps. You've probably all read the manual on high-angle, long-range engagement in mountainous terrain, written 25 years ago." They all nodded. It was their Bible. The author's name was redacted for security reasons, the general continued. "You've all heard the stories from Afghanistan, about the single shooter they called the Ghost of Kandahar, the one who made an impossible shot at over 2,400 meters with a modified M40 rifle, in a sandstorm, to save a pinned-down recon team." The Marines' eyes widened. These were more than stories, they were foundational myths of their craft. "Marines," General Vance said, his voice filled with pride. "Allow me to introduce you to Master Gunnery Sergeant Elias Thorne, retired. The man who wrote your Bible. The ghost." The air left the room. Staff Sergeant Rourke and his team stared at the quiet man in the flannel shirt as if they were seeing him for the first time. They were standing in the presence of a living deity of their profession. One by one, without a word or a command, they snapped to the most rigid and respectful position of attention they had ever held. Rourke's apology had been for a mistake, this was for a legend. Elias simply gave them a slow, tired nod, the silent acknowledgement of a master to his apprentices. The lesson was complete. Respect isn't worn in a uniform or programmed into a computer, it's earned in quiet mastery and proven by deeds that echo through time. Weeks later, General Vance visited Elias's workshop. He found the Master Gunnery Sergeant sanding his rocking chair, the afternoon sun filtering through the dusty air. On a nearby workbench, a brand new, perfectly balanced XM-2100 rifle case sat, a gift from a grateful sniper team. Elias hadn't even opened it. He was content with the simple honesty of the wood in his hands, a quiet hero who had once again answered the call, not for glory or recognition, but because a friend had asked, and because some things, like true mastery, never retire. If you believe that wisdom and honor have no expiration date, subscribe to our channel for more stories of the heroes who walk among us.